Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. And today we've got actually a couple of demos to show you. One is Transform, but it relates very tightly to Alpha Anywhere in the sense that everything that you can do here in Transform, you can do in Alpha Anywhere. What I'm going to be showing you is actually a sample application that we put together a few years ago. And it may give you some inspiration for the Alpha Anywhere applications that you want to build. It can also show you how you could use Alpha Transform to build out applications, even if you're just going to use them for proof of concept before you build them for real in Alpha Anywhere. The second thing I'm going to show you is something to do with the Alpha Anywhere security framework. There's a new Genie, which I demonstrated a few months back, maybe. I'm going to show that to you again, and I'm going to show you how to make some modifications to the UXs and interfaces and stuff that it builds for you. So we're also here, of course, to answer your questions. And you could type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel or the chat window of the GoToWebinar control panel, depending on your interface. You can also send those questions into guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. And like I do at the beginning of almost every webinar, I can ask someone out in the audience to let me know, can you hear me? And can you see my screen? Just to make sure that all the AV stuff is there. All right, thank you very much. Great, so let's get cracking. We're going to begin right now with the transform demo. And this transform demo is basically an application that was used for doing inspections. After that, we will then dive right into security. And again, you could type in questions at any point. So let's get started. Go over here. Just a quick thing, part of this is that I'm about to play is pre-recorded. That sometimes means that the volume is going to be a little bit louder than my voice is right now. If that is the case, just have your hand on your headphones or on your volume control. I don't want to blast you out here. All right, let's get going. BoilerMinder. BoilerMinder is an application that, if you can imagine, is used for service technicians who service industrial boilers. And basically, it's there to help them keep track of the jobs that they're working on, keep track of the equipment that they're inspecting. It provides them checklists, it provides them information. There's a whole bunch of details to it. And I'm going to show you how basically all of its functionality starting right now. So to begin, when you open up the BoilerMinder application, it's going to ask you for the building that you want. And so there's an on-device database that contains all of the buildings that might have the boilers that you're interested in servicing. In other words, people with whom you have contracts. And along with the name of the building, there's some other information that's stored as well. So when I choose, for example, Mass General as the building name, it happens to know that Mass General is located in Boston, Mass. And because it's in Boston, Mass, and it knows that, a TPL command then goes and fires off an AJAX callback to a web API service from the National Weather Service, and it determines what the current temperature in Boston is, which it's displayed here. Now we're going to end up using that temperature a little bit later on, so I just wanted to show you that. Next, the technician verifies that they are in fact at the correct location, and they can do that just by tapping on the location control, which activates the phone's own GPS hardware, and coupled with Google Maps displays where they are right on the screen. So now that that's done, the next thing they're going to do is tap the inspections link. And inspections here I have plural because you can have multiple. In fact, Transform supports data structures with unlimited complexity. Now, in this case, we've set up a parent-child relationship so that for each building, you can have multiple inspection records. You can have multiple boilers. And in fact, each boiler could have multiple inspection records. So you could think of it as a one-to-many relationship. And to begin the process, just to make it easy, you can either scan in an ID code that's on the boiler, or maybe the ID code is damaged or something like that, and you have to actually type in the boiler. You could do it that way too. But assuming that you scan it in, it opens up the device's own camera and uses it to scan the codes. Now, once the code has been found, as it's seen up here, is my boiler scan, and it returned this information from the QR code. It uses that information again on the onboard database to do a lookup, of the equipment. And it returns the make, the model, the serial number. It also includes some notes, such as the fact that it was serviced 14 months ago, and small amount of corrosion was found near the safety valve. And that's something that you're probably going to want to be on the lookout for this time that you do the inspection. So now that it's located use the barcode to locate the type of boiler we're working on, and in fact, the specific boiler along with its service history, we're presented now with a checklist for this boiler, and that's for this boiler in particular. If it was a different type of boiler, it may very well have different questions. For example, if it's an oil-based boiler, it may have questions about the oil tank versus natural gas, or it may have questions relating to the gas system. In this particular one, we have, it's asking you questions about the water gauge. That's that clear piece of glass that's in front of a boiler. It's on both industrial boilers, even on your home boiler if you have one. It lets you see that the water level is fine, and that water gauge can become dirty. There's clean piping and float chamber. I actually have no idea what that is. The stack temperature, which is how hot the gases are coming up out of the flue, as well as a picture of the safety valves and some information about that as well. So let's go ahead and imagine we are using this application, and we click the dirty button for water gauge. Now, because we've indicated that it's dirty, we get this special message that it pops up here. It says, unless the water gauge is completely opaque, cleaning it is not recommended unless the unit is going to be taken out of service for other reasons. Or to put it another way, the next time you pull this unit out of service for some reason, then would be a great time to clean the water gauge. And that's information that we're going to use later. For the next one, the stack temperature, which is the temperature of the gases going up the chimney, we use this mobile optimized keyboard to provide, big buttons to make it easy to not fat finger the keys. In other words, you can type them in accurately. And once they've been typed in, we actually do a data verification. We happen to know that for this particular furnace, that the normal reading is 500 degrees or below, but we've entered 625. So now it creates a brand new button for us asking us, hey, do you want to confirm that, or do you want to go ahead and recheck? Maybe you didn't read that the meter right, or the temperature gauge right. But assuming that you confirm it, a couple of things can happen. First of all, it can tell you, don't worry, this isn't dangerous, but it may indicate that the system is running inefficiently, so it does need to be looked into. But it can also know that for this particular type of operation, seeing if a system is running efficiently requires a certain skill level. And because the database knows who's logged in, it knows that this technician isn't actually trained to perform that kind of service. So it lets them know, look, according to your file, you're not currently certified to diagnose and correct this issue. But what it does do is it sends an email back to headquarters letting them know that this boiler will need to be looked at in the future because it seems to be running a little bit too hot. Okay, so for the next type of information that we're going to click, we're going to look at the safety valve, and we're going to take a picture of the safety valve. Now, with Transform, you can take pictures at different resolutions. So typically we use medium resolution, and this is fine for most purposes. If you were taking a picture of a car which had a dent in it, a medium resolution picture is just fine. But if you want to take a really detailed photo, you might want to set it up to higher resolution, which is what we've done here when we've taken a picture of this corroded safety valve. In fact, the image is so clear you can actually read the part numbers and stuff right off of the valve, which is very handy. You can set this on a field-by-field basis in Alpha Transform. You just do that in the commands functions area. You click on the field and you tell it what resolution you want to use. Now, on top of snapping a photo, we also offer image annotation, and you can choose the thickness and the color of the pen that you use to draw on the picture. So with this built-in annotation, the technician is circling on this safety valve an area that they think is potentially dangerous. Look, this is a safety valve, and it looks like it's got maybe not a huge amount of corrosion, but a moderate amount of corrosion on it. So that's going to be annotated right there. And it shows up here in the form. Now, the next question is sort of the judgment call from the point of view of the technician is that sort of a moderate or a mild amount of corrosion? And that looks like a moderate amount. So when they click on moderate, a whole bunch of things happen. And I'm going to show them to you right now. The first thing is you get this warning. The warning says that the part needs to be replaced soon. But then the second thing is it starts to use a little bit of intelligence here. For example, it knows from the furnace that you've selected what the replacement part is for the furnace, or sorry, for the boiler that you selected. In this case, it's a CSX22B. It also knows from an on-device database that the inventory level for the CSX22B means that it knows the inventory for that part, and it knows that it's on the truck. It's ready to go. It knows from yet another table what the estimated cost for the parts and the repairs are for replacing this type of safety valve. And then, if you remember back to our Ajax callback to get the temperature in Boston, it lets you know that, hey, the temperature is 65 degrees, meaning that if we take this boiler out of service, it probably won't have much of an impact on the comfort of the occupants. Chances are they're either not running the heat, or if they wanted to run the heat, it's still not going to get, say, too cold in their apartment or their office space or something like that. On the other hand, if the temperature was, say, oh, I don't know, -4 degrees, it might say, hey, this is a repair you may want to delay until, for a week or so until the temperature comes back to a regular amount. Since the part needs to be replaced soon, it doesn't need to be replaced immediately. Now, if you remember also earlier, we mentioned that the gauge, the water gauge, was dirty. And since it knows now that you're thinking about doing a repair that'll take the boiler offline, it makes a suggestion that you clean the water gauge at the same time. It also tells you what the price is for that and tells you what the new estimate will be for that. So now the technician has all of this stuff in hand. They know that the safety valve needs to be replaced. They know that they've got one in stock. They know there's probably something else they should do, clean the water gauge. They know how much it costs. And from the record that was tied to the building, we also know the name of the building manager who can approve the repair work being done. In this case, the person's name is Jan Jacobs. Not only that, we have contact information for Jan Jacobs and the ability to call them just by tapping on their link. So while they call up the link, another question appears, and it asks if the facility manager has approved the repair estimate. And you can either say yes or no to this. If the answer is no, you're pretty much done with the inspection at that point. You just sign it off and send it away. But if they do approve the repair, a couple more options appear. In fact, 3 more options appear. One is whether or not maintenance was successful, obviously. One is a timer to record how long it took to perform the repair, because this is going to be used later on when calculating the invoice. And the other thing that appears, in fact, the first thing that appears, are the instructions on how to perform the repair. Again, this is using on-device data that can be stored locally, so you don't need to have a cell phone signal in order to access it. So here's the maintenance instructions. The system knows that you're going to be doing replacing a safety valve and cleaning a water gauge, so it pulls up only assets that are relevant to that. Here is the video on how to replace a CSX series safety valve, and here's the PDF on how to clean the water gauge. When that's all done, so once you've read the instructions and you're about to start, you can just simply tap on the stopwatch and go and perform the repair. And when the repair is successful, you just click yes. And let me show you what happens when you click yes. When you click yes, it takes the calculation for the labor in terms of hours. Let's say it was 2.5 hours. And it multiplies it out by the hourly rate for this technician, also stored on the device, and it figures out the cost of the labor. It then reminds you of what the estimate was that you had told the building manager. You told them it was going to be $997.10 or thereabouts. But in actuality, because you did the job a little bit quicker, the actual parts and labor are just $959.60. And you can have an option right now to actually send an invoice out to the building manager to pay that, or whoever's responsible for accounts payable for this. So simply by clicking yes will cause a fully formed invoice to be generated and sent off. It's then up for the signature to up to the technician to sign the signature, and then they can submit it. And the nice thing that's about this, of course, is that when they're done, they don't have any paperwork left to do. I mean, everything regarding, what they did, how long it took, how much it costs, even the invoice and stuff, are all being handled automatically by the system. So they can move right on to the next job and not waste their time doing paperwork. All right, so that was the example of BoilerMinder, fairly sophisticated TPL-driven application in Transform, TPL being the programming language, the client-side programming language that's very similar to JavaScript that's built into Transform. If there are any questions, of course, type those questions into the questions box. And like I had reminded you, we're going to be doing some free tiers and free versions of Transform. If you want to get involved in that a little early, just send over an email to guides@alphasoftware.com and I can hook you up with a license. Let's see here what we've got for questions. So here's the question. What happens if the emails and invoices are sent if it's offline at the time? Well, we could have it set up to trigger directly from the Transform application. Or the other way you can do it is you can have it triggered based on what's called an on-submit event in Transform. So let's say you're using Transform and you don't have a cell signal. That's fine. Transform is meant to work in an offline mode. And you do as much as you possibly can, but there are certain things you can't do. Like in that example, you wouldn't be able to contact the building manager if you didn't have any signal whatsoever. And you wouldn't be able to do a lookup to see what the temperature was. You could still do a lookup to know whether or not you had the parts in stock if you kept that on a local SQLite database on your phone. You could also do that to keep track of serial numbers and maintenance history and things like that. That could all be updated before you even went into the field. So then when you got a cell signal again, you could hit the submit button, and when it's submitted, it goes and looks at your answer of yes, I'd like to send an invoice, and it can automatically generate that invoice and send it out through the Transform system, which would actually be the way that I'd recommend doing it to begin with. Can you have multiple on-submit events for the same form? Yes, you absolutely can. You can have as many as you like, and you can set it up so that your on-submit event applies to multiple forms or a particular form under a particular circumstance. So in this case, it could say, when I get an inspection form back, I want to see, if a field indicated that a repair was performed successfully, and I want to see the other fields seeing whether or not I need to send out an invoice. And then, of course, I want to see the fields with the data in it that I'll pass into that report, such as what the parts and labor costs were for that, and that could be sent right back out. So that is all possible with Transform. All right, so moving along, let's take a look at a little bit of Alpha Anywhere. And this, what we're going to go over now is based on a question that I got, I think, last week regarding the Alpha Anywhere security framework. So the Alpha Anywhere security framework, many of you are familiar with it, but it's a built-in system in Alpha Anywhere so that you don't have to write your own security system. It operates up at the server level, and it makes sure that that information does not go to people who are not logged in or are not authorized to see that data. There are multiple parts to the system. There's tables that keep track of users. There's tables that keep track of other information about the user that isn't necessarily username and password, which is what we call the extended information table. There are also parts that let them know what pages they're allowed to see, sometimes what controls they're allowed to see, and all kinds of things, what security groups they're in. But this particular question today had to do with editing something that is created by the Genie, by the security Genie. So I'm going to just go ahead into Alpha Anywhere. I'll just show this to you live. And here we are in Alpha Anywhere. So let's say I wanted to create a brand new project and I'm setting up security for the first time. It doesn't really matter. Maybe I already had some UXs here, but I'm going to start from scratch just a better example. So I'm going to go new project, and the project name is going to be called security. If I can spell security webinar. All right. I'm going to click OK, and now my web project's control panel is blank, and it's ready for me to build my application. Now I can start by installing all the pieces that I need for web security. And to do that, we have got a Genie that'll help you do that. So you just go up here to where it says web security. And this was added at the end of last year, if you guys are familiar with that. And this is the web security box that's come up for a while, but we now have this new thing. Use the quick setup Genie to automatically set up web security settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that hyperlink, and I'll get this dialog box. And it goes through and it says, look, I'm going to now build a login page for you. I'm going to build pages for users to change their password. I can set up two-factor authentication if you like, and I can set other fields in the extended user information table. So what in the heck is the extended user information table? We've actually answered that right here. When you set up your security system, we have some security tables, but those are all controlled by Alpha. You can get to them using XBasic to update passwords and some other things, but they have a very strict schema. You can't add any fields to them. You can't delete fields. You can't rename fields. So if you want to keep extra information about a particular user, you're going to put it into a new table called the extended user information table. This might hold things like phone numbers or addresses or departments or things like that, all kinds of information that might be useful but don't really have to do directly with logging into your application. So to build that, all you have to do is check this box, create extended user information table, and we will handle it for you. And then you can go in later on and using whatever tool you use, whether it's Navicat or HeidiSQL or something like that, and you can modify that table and add all the fields in it that you'd like. So we're going to start right here, and so we've checked that box, and right here it says connection string, and we do add some fields right off the bat: first name, last name, some of the obvious ones. So to create the user information table, it's going to need a connection string. So connection strings are used all over Alpha Anywhere, and they're meant to connect your components to your databases. There's always an automatic database that we can set up for you called the Northwind database. There's a link here that will appear if you don't have one created. I'm going to go ahead and choose one that I've already built. So we're not going to get into databases too much today. And that's all I need to do. So all I have to do now is just click yes. And it's going to say the security framework was enabled. It's going to say, look, I've created a bunch of fake users and groups for you. And here's one of the users, user1 at alpha.com, password user1. You'll notice that they are an administrator. This is good to know for testing reasons. So do keep track of that, because you want to log in using user1 at alpha.com and user1 alpha. All right. Now I did this before, so as a result, I already have these tables in my database. I'm going to tell them it's okay to go ahead and overwrite them. They were just for test purposes. You're probably not going to see this database if you're setting this up for the first time, or you're not going to see this dialog box. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now it says that it's going to it needs to analyze the components and put everything in there. And the only last question is whether or not in your login component, which you'll see it in a minute, is when it designs it, do you want to have an image on the left or do you want to have an image behind the login prompts? Doesn't really make any difference. This is just a style thing, but I'm gonna, you could say see available styles. Image on the left means it places an image here that you could change, and there's the username and password. Image behind means you stick it right in the middle. Yeah, let's use the one where it's in the background. I think I like that one. So let's pop back into Alpha Anywhere, and I'm going to say image behind. All right, cool. So it is now built for me a whole bunch of stuff that I can use. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to my login page. And actually, I'm just going to go ahead and do I'm just going to go ahead and run this. So I'm going to do a live test. And I'm going to say I'm going to do a live test to my login.a5w page. Okay. And here's the component that it's built for me. Again, you can make any type of customization you like here, fonts and colors and button styles and all that. This may not be what your cup of tea when it comes to design, but it's just the default one. So I'm going to go ahead and log in using the username and passwords that you showed me a minute ago. user 1 alpha, and I should be logged in. Now, because I am an administrator, it knows that I am allowed to use administrator tools and things like that here. So I'm going to go ahead and say manage users and groups. Actually, that's not the one I want. What I want to do is I want to go to, oh yeah, that's right. So here I'm under users, and I'm going to choose user 1, that's me. And I'm going to actually double click on that. And when I do, you'll see a dialog slide in, or a panel slide in. And this shows me what exists in the user information table. First name, last name, avatar URL, company, department, email, and whether or not I want to use two-factor authentication. I can edit all of those here, and because that's all stored in that external user information table. All right, so hopefully everyone has followed me so far, not just how we got here. Oh, I see. Are the sorry, hang on. We do have a question here. Are the tables based on the server, or are these tables based on the project? They are on a project by project basis. So if you're doing multiple apps, same server, you can have different security on your server under different instances of the server running. That is. But I think security beyond but security is also based on the project level. That's another important scope thing. So what I have set up here for security webinar isn't the same as what I have here for my default test one. Should launch here in a minute. So let's go back to security webinar. Okay. And what we're going to take a look at back here in this page are these field labels. So the question that was asked was, okay, I've gotten this far. I've set up the security framework, and I have a extended user information table, but I don't like the format of this very much. First of all, first name, I'd like to have that be 2 words, last name 2 words, and maybe I'd want to make some other changes as well. So the question is, how do I go ahead and edit this panel? So what you might be hoping is that you would just open up this component. I'll show you which one it is. The components, it's called admin maintain users and groups. And you'd hope that what you would find, yes, create initial backup, is our fields for first name, last name, and all that you could just easily modify the field labels on. But that's not how we actually set it up here. We actually create those fields dynamically based on what's inside the table. That way you can make changes to your extended user information table and not have to make any changes to this component. It'll automatically know what the new fields are, and it will list them out in that extended information table like you just saw. However, when it's doing that, it's only using the field names as the field labels. So the question is, what if I wanted to use different field labels? Well, let me show you how that works. And it involves a little bit of XBasic. So if you're ready to put on your XBasic hat, we're going to go take a look at that. So here we are in the XBasic functions, of which there are a bunch for this particular component. Again, you can just click this down arrow here to see all of the functions that are used. And the one that we want is the one called create HTML form. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And what this does is it actually creates it just basically creates a form out of the fields that you have done. And here's how it works. It goes in and let me scroll up so you can see this a little bit better. It goes in here and it basically goes through a loop through the database. And in each case, it adds in an input box. This is all HTML. It's just building HTML on the fly. That's how it works. And so it puts in it starts out with a class and a div. It puts in, this is actually the field label right here. And then it puts in a dialog box, an input box for each of those fields. So the question is, how do I automatically find the fields and replace them with the names that I like? And to do that, you're going to do a little bit of XBasic coding. And this I think is pretty cool because it shows a couple of XBasic features that I want to show off. So let's pop over to here. I actually got this in PowerPoint. All right. So again, we would like to, just a quick reminder, we want to replace these yucky field labels with nicer field labels like my first name or last name or things like that. So what we need to do is we need to go into the code. Oops, here it is. And I pulled it out here and made it bigger so that it's easier to see. So this is just the snippet that we care about. So what we're going to do here is right up at the very beginning, we are going to create a string dictionary. Now, a string dictionary is a type of class. Think of it as almost like a variable class that you have in Alpha Anywhere that allows you to store name-value pairs in it. And in this case, we've only done a couple name-value pairs, but we've set it up so that first names is the key value, and my first name is the value that's associated with it. Last name is the value, and last name is the field value. So all you'd have to do is for each one of the fields that you would like to change the name on, you would put in the field name as it appears in the database, and then set that equal to the value that you would like to actually see displayed on the screen. When that's done, oops, come on. When that's done, what we're going to do is we are going to initialize the string dictionary. We did that by first dimensioning a variable called SD as a type string dictionary. String dictionary documentation can be found online. It's kind of sparse. It doesn't have a lot of examples, but it's also somewhat easy to follow. So again, if you ever have any questions using this or any other kind of feature, just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. Or at the bottom of this page, though you can't see it here, there's a link that you could send in a request for clarification. So basically a string dictionary, you can add and remove these name value pairs. All right, so one of the functions in here is the get function. So with the get function, if I supply it with first name, what I should get back out the other side is my first name, okay? So here's when we start to, we start going through our loop. So as we go through the loop and we start pulling out all of the fields that were in our table and putting them on the form, one of the things we'll do is we're going to set a variable called label, and we're going to set that to sd.get, and then the name of the variable, the name of the field, sorry, the field name as it's stored in the database, and that's stored in this thing called a1.name, ai.name. If a match is found, then it's going to use that match. If it finds first name, it's going to. If no match is found, then it's just going to use the name of the field as it was originally, and it's going to put that field in uppercase. And then at the end of the if, the very last thing to do is edit where it's doing the HTML generation and add in the label where we previously had it just pull right directly from the name of the field. So when that gets put in place and you run it, voila, you get your field names, as we've seen here in this example. Bang, bang. All right, cool. All right, so that is, let's see what we've got here in code. Okay, so great, couple other questions that we've got here. Question 1, can two-factor authentication be applied to certain users and not to others? Yes, I believe it can be applied on a user-by-user basis. And in fact, that's just one of the things that we have here. I can double check if you've got an issue with that, but I'm pretty sure that that is how we had it set up. There might be also a way to force, in fact, I'm sure there's a way to force two-factor authentication. So you can have it set up as a choice for the user, or you can force it to happen, and that's up to you. Question in code, when do we use an equal sign and when do we use the double equal sign? Well, the double equal sign does have a meaning in XBasic. I've forgotten what it is, but when it comes to JavaScript code, this is usually where people are running into equal signs and double equal signs. And in the case of JavaScript, in XBasic, we use the equal sign to do two things. We can use it to assign a variable like x equals 7, or we can use it to compare a variable. If x equals 7, for example, and get back like a value of true or false. In JavaScript, they don't do it. They've got two separate ones. So if you could say x equals 7 would, in JavaScript, set the value equal to 7. But you would say if x equals 7, if you wanted to know whether or not x equaled 7. And so that's what we do when you're working with the JavaScript portion of Alpha Anywhere. As far as other operators, I think we might have like exact, equal, and some other sort of standard stuff. I would not be surprised, but let's take a look at the documentation. So I'm going to pop over to documentation and we're going to go to XBasic operators. See what we get. Operators in XBasic. I don't think that we bother with double equals in XBasic. Just looking at here, I might be wrong. But we use equal signs for both assigning and for, oh no, that's not true. Here we go. We do have exactly equal. It's one of the ones there. So not equal, exactly equal. So let's find the basic. Let's find exactly equal. So the search here that we have built into documentation is okay, but sometimes, oh, here we go. Let's actually just pop out and use use Google to do it too if I can't find what I'm looking for, and it'll actually find it in our documentation system. All right, so let's give an example. I see. So the deal is that in so it needs to match exactly. So that means if there's padded space at the end of it, it's going to come out false. Oh, and if there's and it also is case sensitive in that case. Let's take a peek in at the interactive window in XBasic and give that a run. Okay, control panel, interactive window. All right, so we're gonna say X, okay, name equals Fred. And then we'll say print name equals Fred. And hopefully I should get back a true. I'm going to say print name equals capital Fred. Also true. Print name equals Fred space, 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 space. True as well. So it looks like with the equal, we're really pretty flexible and want equals. On the other hand, if I said question mark name equals Fred lowercase, I should get back a false. Oh, and I didn't. Why is that? Is it case sensitive? Oh, I'm sorry, capital Fred. That's what user error. Okay, so I'm almost positive I'm going to get back the right thing this time. There we go, false. Hopefully that answers that question. Next question is one I don't know the answer to offhand, but I'll absolutely get it for you for next time. I can email you the answer, and that is, how do I use a JavaScript function inside client-side templating? So I will go back into that. I know that we've recently done a presentation on client-side templating, so I'd like to go back and revisit that. So I will get an answer to that, but I don't have one for you right now. Are there any other questions? It appears not. Well, hey, thanks very much, everyone, for showing up. I very much appreciate it. Next week, we will be back with Dion McCormick, who will be continuing his discussion on using Python in Alpha Anywhere. In the meantime, you know how to reach us, guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Till then, thanks very much. Bye-bye.